in stride with, and it shows that you are really wanting to do the work and be a part of this movement in your community. So definitely thank you all for having me.
You are quite welcome. Now, you know what? We are really we're about to get in her business, okay? Because one of the things that, I would like for you to do is to tell us a little bit about you. Where are you from? Who is Erniko Brown? Tell us a little bit about you.
Oh man. So my name is Erniko Brown. From here in South Carolina, very rural area called McCormick. Grew up on family land that's been in my family for over 200 years. Raised typical family. My mother worked third shift, single mother. So my grandmother had most of us all the time. And it was 5 grandkids in the house with my grandmother, my grandfather, and 3 of my uncles at the time. Again, because my mom worked third shift. Went to school in a rural area. We don't have, we've never had any like main stores or anything like that. Grew up gardening and farming my entire life. I'm used to waking up 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, having breakfast, going out in the yard, growing food, being out in the gardens all day, helping my cousins with the cows, the pigs, the chickens, just really doing all the things that quote unquote country people do. I am. As a matter of fact, before I got here today, I had to tend to my garden. So just a person who has been in this work, didn't know that this work was actually the work that people were doing. And I sort of kind of got into it as an innocent bystander. And so I, got into it, learned that there were a lot of false narratives around rural people, what we do and how we begin to change that narrative on behalf of ourselves. Because if you are an individual who is working all day, a typical day for my family would be waking up 5:30 in the morning with my grandmother. She getting all of us ready to go to school, feeding everybody, cooking lunch, making lunch for all of my uncles. And then she would go off to work. When she went off to work, my uncles went off to work. Our grandfather watched us at the bus stop. We got on the bus. I had an uncle who worked third shift. He would get off. And when he got home, he would start lunch. So there would be something on the stove throughout the day. When we got home, we had whatever was on the stove. And by the time we got home, maybe an hour or so after that, my grandmother got home. We might see our mother, and we may not. We may just go to grandmama's house and on the weekend see our mom, because we lived in a row. Matter of fact, the road that we live on, the family land that we come from, is actually called Brown Road. So we may see them, we may not. And when we got to our grandmother's house, dinner was made. We would be out in the garden in the flower beds, picking plums, picking all the things, doing homework. We grew up having to teach ourselves how to do each other's hair. Every now and then we have an aunt who did hair. And so every now and then we would go to her shop if it was Easter or something like that, if our parents couldn't do our hair. And yeah, that was the way that it went. We had an entire system in the rural area. So this false narrative that people often speak about is something that was very unfamiliar to me when I got into this work.
Thank you for sharing that. I was saying, one of the things that I appreciate about, knowing you and working alongside of you, especially, in the national spaces like U.S. CAN and, other places, is that you speak to this thing about community and what you have to do for community. You mentioned, and I think this is so powerful, about how how our lives, how our histories really tell our story. You said you had a couple 100 acres of land and your family lived on that land. You worked the land, you tilled the land, you farmed the land. But not only that, the street was named after you. And it goes to show why a lot of times people don't understand why the legacy of telling our stories is so important in breaking down this dominant narrative that when you think about Appalachia, or you think rural, you think about white people, it's absent of Black people, it's absent of Black identity, it's absent of Black imagery, it's absent of Black visibility. And if it's not, it's very dim. And so what I'd like for you to share is number one, did your upbringing help you to get into the work that you do now, especially around environmental justice?
Absolutely. And the reason the way that I got in, it was getting brownie points in a relationship, a bystander, and was going to this, and I thought that it was a very new thing that was going on, because they talked about environmental justice, edible organic landscapes, and demonstration sites. And so for me, I'm like, well, she's a little younger than I am. Let me, it might be something new out here, something new under the sun. And so when I finally went to the space, I was like, oh girl, you got some garden beds you got a garden with a couple of raised beds. Like, this is nothing new. And that's when I had to tell her, listen, I've been, growing my entire life. And so this thing and the placement of it, it was the edible organic landscape and demonstration site was actually in a historically Black community. And this was a white-led or is a white-led organization. And so for me, it kind of perturbed my spirit, simply because you're giving a name to something that had already existed. And we coined this term right now, sustainability. And what I love to say, and I tell anybody, Bishop Marcia, I'm pretty sure you've heard it. And if y'all were here last year, it's the same thing that I stand on. Sustainability is merely survival, which Black folks have been doing for over 400 years. When you talk about agriculture, when you talk about farming, we had to farm to not only feed our families as a family, but we farmed the land of white people to survive in communities and on plantations. We picked the cotton. We did the food, we took care of the children, we did all of the rearing. And so for me, as soon as I seen this, I was instantly upset, because it's like, how do you come in and take something and rehash it to fit you to get those dollars? Because me, gardening is agriculture. To me, farming is agriculture. To me, taking care of home, growing anything, growing as it relates to food is agriculture. And those are the things that my ancestors got beat for, to put food on somebody else's table. And then we got the scraps of those things. I was looking at a picture the other day where people had where they were talking about hogs and how hogs, Black people raised hogs for white people, and they ended up with the scraps. So Black people, our thing was chitlins, right? Well, now there's a whole thing where now it's considered a delicacy. And when you go to buy a bucket of chitlins, where they used to be $3.99, $4.99, now they're $11, $12 for one bucket of it, where this was something, these were the scraps that was given to our ancestors historically, because they never felt that we were enough. And this was what was all that was left to give to the people who basically tended to the pigs in the community. So
yeah, and let me say this. Chitlins, she was mild with the chitlins is $49, $50 a bucket. I'm telling you, they were $50. But you know, the bottom line is what I hear is that we have to get back to this point of truthing it. You know, that's the best way I can say it. We have to truth it. And the only way we're going to have any type of change in our movement space or you know, in this social activism space or have change politically, we got to tell the truth. And not only do we have to tell that truth, you know, we have to and not just reconcile it, you know, but also this point of understanding that it's not to negate that someone, you know, that other people did not live in the Appalachian region. What we're really saying here is that the people who put, you know, who have given to the region have now been, you know, invisibilized. And so we have to be able to be, you know, to tell our story, to maintain the story, to codify it. And when you look at what's going on today with affirmative action being changed, when you look at the fact that everything about Black people is on trial, your hair is now policy, everything about the Black body is being politicized. You know, can you wear braids? Can you wear locks? Can you do all of these things, of which has been co-opted, you know, as well? When Bo Derek wore French braids, they were acceptable. But I'm not going to go there, y'all, because I'm getting ugly. So let me stay cute tonight, because tomorrow. But at the end of the day, you know, I'm, you know, in all seriousness, these are the ways that we have to be able to come. We have to be able to come, you know, transparent. And what I love is that this is a beautiful, you know, a beautiful array of folks, because also in this work, as you stated, Commissioner, you know, we have to change the narrative. The narrative is going to be changed by us. But a lot of times people forget. You know, especially I'm thankful for the funders that support us because they understand it. But a lot of people think that the only way to get the work done is you got to start at policy. No, you got to start at the story. You have to start at the narrative, because if you can't shift the narrative to change the minds or get to the point of understanding that the narrative strategy that is part of the storytelling, so that we can scale it up for the change that we need. And so when we talk about scaling up for the change that we need, I know that you've done some powerful things, and you know, and the reason she's here, because I know folks are like, she's not in the Valley. No, she's not. But we're talking about rural possibilities, you know, so that folks can see that these possibilities are everywhere. But I want to go back to, you know, this thing about, I want folks to know a little bit about, not only are you a farmer, you know, not only are you a commissioner, not only are you in the faith-based space, but can you tell us a little bit about, you know, the work that you have done in the environmental justice space? And then from there, I'm going to go a little deeper. So I'm just putting that disclosure out after, you know, to let you know ahead of time. But if you could tell folks, like, you know, the work that you did around, like, you know, wood pellets, and, you know, and not just in your city, in your state, but how you kind of crossed the aisles.
Oh, cool. So I honestly started this work, environmental justice work, maybe 8 years ago. But if you talk about my life and living in rural areas and not knowing, this has been the work my entire life, right? We've always been working within systems. I started this environmental work 8 years ago, doing work around politics. Originally started like campaigning in 2007 with Obama, honestly. And so for the last 15, 16 years, I've been out on the front lines, issue-based stuff. I've always worked in my community. There was a program here called Upward Bound for first generation college students. I've been a tutor, senior tutor, bridge advisor. From there, I've done geriatric social work. I've been a career coach for the state of South Carolina. Outside of that, I've worked with organizations around, as Bishop Marcia stated, wood pellet issues. I currently go back and forth between two counties, but I currently live in one county that has a wood pellet facility. And so I did some work. Well, I worked for an organization where I was the senior management person for environmental and social impact. And so what I did was I built out a campaign across the entire Southeast. I used to manage 14 states. And so what I did was, because I lived in this community, we often talk about what's right and what's wrong, but we never look at the people who are impacted by the issues. And so being in a community that has a wood pellet, what I did was went 10 and a half hours away from here and worked in Mississippi, doing work around a wood pellet mill there. From there, I built out a grassroots coalition while building out a grass tops coalition. Grassroots to spread the word across the entire Southeast around the issues that were going on. And I had leaders in all states across the Southeast. From there, basically did a letter to federal agencies and had several different briefings with those state leaders. And the work that I built out, the campaign that I built out is still going on across the Southeast. And that campaign brought EPA to do a lot of work, in the Southeast, and a lot of that funding and stuff that's actually coming down the pipeline from EPA is a result of a lot of the work that we've been doing for the last 2 years. So we talk about the IRA, we talk about this funding, we talk about EPA all of a sudden doing a lot of this stuff. A lot of that is based off a lot of the work that I started a little over 2 years ago in Mississippi. And so getting people the help that they need, calling these people out, so much so that, I think his name is Daniel Blackman, calling him out in a call. I do not mind doing that because the people need the support, the communities need the support, even talking to them when they started about the IRA funding and it coming down the pipeline. The people who were in charge did not know what they were doing. And so I had to call them on it. And it was like, they talked about how could they get the funding down? Well, you need to get it to the people in the communities. And if you want the people in the communities to have the money, then those are the people that you need to talk to. I don't care about white-led organizations and contractors who are doing this work. It's about those people in those communities, because those are the people who are impacted by the issues. And by the time that money gets down to them, it's little or nothing, because you're paying contractors to pay people to pay other people. So by the time that dollar gets down to the people, you may have 2 cents to work in your community. And so it's calling people out, calling people on their issues, and making sure that they understand that the people who are impacted are the people who need the funding, and not the contractors who know how to finagle the paperwork or write a grant to get it. Because most often, always, the individuals, number one, our funders are almost always our oppressors. And number two, the people who get the money are a lot of times not impacted by those issues that are going on. And so it's up to us to build out community. And I always say, in order to build community, you have to be in community with community. And so I definitely appreciate you, Bishop Marcia, for having this community tonight, because this is how you get started. This is how you build out. This is how you connect with other people, and making sure that, as you stated, like, we have to be able to be open, honest, sincere, and forthcoming with the information. And just because we have a negative history associated with who we are, it doesn't mean that we have to be in continuum and be on that same ride. Like, this is an opportunity for us to change the entire trajectory of what it looks like. And so I'm just grateful to see all of your faces tonight.
Thank you for that. You said so much, and I can't write as fast as folk talk. I should have took shorthand when I was a child. You said this thing about, negative, we don't have to be in alignment with the negativity that's always associated, with Black people or people of color or poor people or poverty, all of the, the definitions or the way that they want to define, communities that they feel like isn't deserving and entitled. But you also talked about change, and this is where I want to go at, because, we talk a lot about, and you know, this is no disrespect to people in the movement space, because I'm in it too. But we spend a lot of time talking about the negativities, and we don't really talk a lot about the opportunities. We you know, one reason we're having this summit is because there's so many possibilities that are before us. You know, Midwest decarbonization, decarbonizing our buildings, you know, coming to a point where we're bringing in energy democracy, energy efficiency. We're able to, you know, push against, you know, petrochemical companies, which you'll learn about tomorrow with regards to decarbonization and petrochemicals. And, you know, who's missing in the fight? We have so many opportunities, but a lot of times we don't take advantage of the opportunities, not because I can't even say on some levels we don't have the access, or they try to keep it from us. But then there are levels where we do have some access. And so for this summit, we're really focusing on that part, which is the local level. And so when you talk about this change, you know, we can be that change and build that change on the local level. And you've done something just recently, you know, where you wanted to come and you thought about, number one, you went back home. And so when you went back home, home was telling a story. And not only that, because what I'm going to ask you to do is talk about what it means to go back home and how storytelling played a significant role in that, and how it also became a framework for you to begin to think about ways to rebuild security, economic, within your community, your hometown, where your roots are, or were. Were, is.
Absolutely. So I've been home, but technically I haven't been home. And in 2019, my grandmother that I've talked to you guys about, the reason I have the skills that I have, the mindset that I have, my grandmother, as I told you guys, when I first started, she raised me. And one of her things was get an education, because that education isn't for you, it's to help somebody else, right? And so I began getting an education, and I thought she meant formal education originally. So of course I have like the, you know, the degrees, the certifications, and I'm currently working on my doctorate. And so as I did this work out across the Southeast, as I done the things that I was doing, I realized that although I'm here out and I'm working nationally and internationally, my home is hurting. These very same things are going on at home. And 4 years ago, I started my organization after my grandmother died. And it was actually birthed out of a project for a certification that I was doing in faith-based nonprofitship through Wake Forest University. And so I wanted to do something to help my community, because 15 minutes one way, you have to drive 15 minutes one way, there's no food or anything. You have to drive 15 minutes another way because there's no food. So this 30-minute stretch, there's no food, there's no gas, there's there are no places to eat, any of that stuff. And so while I'm out here fighting at the federal level for communities who weren't mine and just being a representative, while I'm out in communities across the Southeast who looked like mine but was not mine, mine was hurting. And so for me, home, I chose to go back home because, number one, my grandmother used to say, home will love you when nobody else will. And number two, like, home is the safest place to be able to do this work, because this can be the blueprint that changes so many things. And you're absolutely right. That's where I'm a soil and water commissioner, where I went home, and it was easy. And I'll tell you guys about that. 2 weeks out from voting in the last presidential election, I literally came home from Mississippi. I went home to vote. When I went home to vote, I was looking at the ballot and I said that I was going to run. And I used to be the chief of staff for the Young Democrats of South Carolina. I spoke with our president, told her that I wanted to run, said that I needed a graphic, And we ran that graphic for about a week. I changed the graphic up, did another graphic. It created a lot of stir in the community, so much to where people were calling family members asking how to spell my name. So in 2020, I won my write-in campaign 2 weeks out from election doing a write-in campaign. And people tell me that's something that's really big, but the people knew me, and they knew the work that I did. And so I started this thing around being a commissioner, because again, the only way you can build community is actually be in the community, and the community needs to be representative of the people who live in that community. And so I wanted people to see that education that my grandmother told me that I needed. This is how I can help people. This is how I can start doing what I needed to do. So I became an elected official. After I became that elected official with this nonprofit doing the work across the Southeast, the work that I did began to go international. And so I started doing international work. And again, those things that I was doing in other communities, I needed to be doing it my own community. And again, we talk about this blueprint. And when I talk about statistics from another community, I always put on the back burner talking about predominantly Black, low income communities. My community is currently 86% Black. And again, that 30-mile stretch where there is nothing, that is my community. And so what I did with that, I created, I wanted to create opportunity in my community and to bring those resources in to my community, because we often do this work remotely. And so I can do this work remotely in my community and bring the resources into my community. And that is what I wanted to do. That's what I started doing. And after that, I started, getting into grants, started networking with individuals. And my first grant as my organization and in doing agricultural work was a $20,000 grant from U.S. CAN. And that $20,000 grant allowed me, number one, because I'm already a master gardener, that allowed me to teach gardening classes virtually and in person. That allowed me to send a student here in South Carolina. We have a school called the John Della House School of Agriculture, which is like a elite school. And in our community in McCormick, the school is housed in McCormick, but there were no scholarships for students in McCormick. And so I created a scholarship under my grandmother's name. It's the Grandma Rosie Scholarship, where I pay all fees and tuition for a child every year to go to that school, a Black child. Black or brown child, I'm sorry. And it also allowed me my first one, cutting the red tape, where I gave away over 1 million seeds across the state of South Carolina. And I forgot about the garden beds and the garden starter kits to older people. So what I'm doing, a lot of people see it, and a lot of people also see that I'm challenging the status quo of where we need all of this money to do this work, and we need millions of dollars. I did all of what I did, y'all, with $20,000. And to be honest, it was still about maybe $3,000 left over. And those $3,000 that I had left over, I bought more garden beds and I bought more stuff for individuals in the community. So it really doesn't take a lot of money to do what you need to do locally. It builds morale in your community, because I did another giveaway on Earth Day 2023. And those individuals that I gave away those things to, it built morale in the community. It brought back, because my family, I talked about gardening and stuff. We formed about, I'd say about a half acre on one side and maybe I say about 3/4 of an acre. That is what we farmed. And my family was the family that had the garden. And so people came and got the things that they need. We call, where you just giving people stuff. What we call today mutual aid is merely community, being a neighbor, right? And so those people, do you want me to tell them about the school now, or are we gonna wait?
Well, okay, so you now
Because
let
I
me
was gonna go, but I want to make
no,
sure.
what I do want to say, yeah, so I do want to just inject here and then we can go there, is that I just want to point out a few things that Commissioner Brown stated, to just really reiterate the possibilities of building the local power and making it look so different. Number one, you said about becoming the soil and water commissioner within your community. It took me back to when I in Warren, Ohio, when we got tired of how they were doing things, locally. And we went down to the Board of Elections and, got all of the names of people in different precincts. And we pulled out the people who were part of the coalition. And we situated them to run, for precinct reps, as a way to begin to shift and push people out, who weren't doing right in the community. So why do I say that? These are just examples of maybe that we overlook sometimes, that we have an opportunity to be able to do, to shift some things in our communities, politically and socially. And then you said something that was real, people know you in your hometown. We try to go over everywhere else. And I'll say I've been guilty about wanting to move around, buying into the narrative of safety. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, I'm a single mother. I've got these children here and I need to be safe in my community. And so I've bought into the narrative at a young age that safety meant I needed to live in a specific neighborhood. We don't talk about, we don't talk about how we can improve our neighborhood, because you're right. We knew how to sustain. If I went to Apostle Pressy and asked his wife or him for a cup of sugar, they didn't give me a cup of sugar. They gave me half a bag of sugar. They measured it out between us. We didn't always have to go to the grocery store. I could go to Apostle Ford and he say, I got 6 eggs. He go 3. But is that enough? It was those points of what community looked like, and we knew how to care for one another. And it's amazing that we are in this place now where we're talking about we got to know how to care for one another, when we've already known how to care for one another, how to care for community, but somehow we lost that essence. And I just want to thank you for pointing that out, because we go in and we buy into these words. And all they do is change the word, and it becomes sustainability. But we've been sustaining. We want to talk about thrivability. I want to thrive in my community, and I want my community to be thriving. And so you're just pointing out different ways in which we can begin to organize ourselves. We can't let this work be one-dimensional. It's multi-layer, just like we have multi-layer, issues. We can have multi-layer solutions. And the truth is, it starts with us. And so she mentioned about, the school. And I want to have her tell you about, and this is what I'm talking about, when you go back home and where your roots are and what's sitting in there and the stories connected to it. Now, I don't want you to go too deep, because I got some questions to ask you about, like, how you're going to use it and all of that. And I want to point some things out, but could you please share with us what just happened, or what was just achieved probably within the last 30 days or so?
Absolutely. So we're talking about the school. My organization, I recently purchased a historically segregated school in my community. And when I say historically segregated, it was closed down in the 1970s. They opened it back up as the Mims Willington School number 3. My mother actually went to the school. Her class was the last one to go through the school. And so it's been closed since 1982 officially. And this school is a school that housed pre-K. I think she said 4 pre-K classes, and the school went from 1st through 8th grade to separate cafeterias. So it's a pretty large school, but I recently went to the county, asked them if I could purchase it, had to go through the whole thing around purchasing the school, had to have a public hearing, and the public hearing was like shell shock for me. It was literally, when we talk about segregation, it was literally a snap back into segregation. All the white people were on one side, all of the Black people were on one side. The Black people who were there were actually from the community and spoke up on behalf of me and my organization. And the white people, they weren't there. They weren't a part of the community, didn't even know the school existed. They were pretty much upset because I was buying it. I purchased this school that housed 1st through 8th grade and 7.5 acres for $15,000. So people were pretty upset that it went like that, of course, but the price was so low because it's a economic development initiative that I'm bringing to the community. So yes, I recently purchased a school.
Thank you for your humbleness. Because what I want to point out is, number one, she was really doing something else in the interim of that, and came across, this is what it means to be in relationship with people, or to build relationship, because she actually came across, I can't remember, a gentleman who gave her the history of the school. I believe it was more than just your mom who went there, like several folks in your family who went there, or,
Yeah, so it was, I have a cousin and she's like 87 now. She used to teach there, and she's actually the one who told me. I thought that I was just purchasing the school for the sake of purchasing it. And it's a twofold thing. I wanted it for the land because of my agricultural project. But after knowing what this was, I also want to restore the school and utilize it in the community.
And wasn't there a gentleman who kind of helped you and gave you just a little more tiny history about that there?
Absolutely. So they told me that it was historically segregated. They told me about it, about family members going there. This guy, he actually left the community and he has land. And what happened with him was, I was trying to purchase his piece because although it's a super small town, it's really like a drive-through, y'all. They have downtown Wellington, and across the street from where the old stores are, he has a place, and his father owned it. And so I was trying to buy that from him to, initially it was just going to be a community garden, y'all. So as I talked to him about the stuff, and he was like, well, did you know Wellington used to have a bank? And did you know that they used to have this? Did you know that they used to have that? And I'm like, oh no. And he was like, yeah. And then the school, and talking to some of the council members about it, one of the council members actually told me like they would have all of the children crowded in like one big room, but over in each corner was like a grade that they were supposed to be in, and all of them, it may have been like 6 or 7 of them, but those 6 or 7 shared one book. And so you would have one room, and that one room housed about 30 kids, but those 30 kids were off in each corner with one teacher and maybe 2 books, and they had the pot belly stoves. And so I gained a lot of history around like building community, and the build out of what is now the school, and purchasing it. So it was like a whole time warp to learn about the history of these places, because for me, history has always been like the it thing, and I was a knee baby, always attached to my grandmother, so I got the history. I'm the one, like, if we do another reunion, y'all got to come to me for the information. And in the midst of this, also learned that my family is a part of a very historic thing called the Gillebo Brown House here, and the Gillebo Brown House was actually moved from where the school was down to a state park. And in the state park, people come and pay $500 a night to stay there. But as a descendant of this, we don't benefit from that in any way. So that's another one that I was looking around me, because one of the people gave me a picture of my great grandmother standing in front of that house June 11, 1916. And I thought I had it around, but yeah. So as a descendant, if nobody is utilizing the house, we can walk on the grounds, but that's about all we can do with something like that. So just learning a lot of the history and what's going on.
Thank you. I'm hoping everyone is, many of you are feeling inspired. And I know that all of us may not have the same, kind of experiences and stories that Commissioner Brown has. But what I think it points out is the importance of knowing our story and telling our stories for ourselves. It really demonstrates, the need and the necessity for us to know our history, even what's inside of our communities, because we just don't know, and we kind of discount it. It talks, what I take from this is just the various ways that we can build. We may not have an origin there, but we do have an origin there. And what do I mean by that? My roots may not have been originally there, but I can begin an origin and a legacy in my community. I can begin to plant seeds and plant them deep. We can do that. And so but it's going to take us understanding that our fight doesn't start at the federal level. It starts right in your front yard. It starts right on your curb. It starts right at the school in your community. It starts in around the block away from you. It starts in your grocery store. Matter of fact, the lack of the grocery store, because a lot of us only have dollar stores and family trees and Dollar Generals to be able to buy food from. It used to be a time we had food trucks. It used to be a time you had the fruit truck. And used to be a time they had the swim. Well, we ain't talking about that because I was like, ain't nobody getting in that swim mobile. But then you had the bookmobile. It used to be a time community needs were met in the community by the community. And if we are going to ensure that the change occurs, then we have to be the game changer in that and willing to be that instrument of change. When I think about the school, and she and I have had multiple conversations around this, and we hear through the IRA that we need workforce development. And we need this education and training. And the first thing that I thought about was, wow, what we talk about decarbonization. We talk about moving from, fossil fuels to electrification. What would it mean? Number one, to train people to go in this building, to create jobs right there, to teach them the ways to decarbonize that building, to think about energy efficiency in that building, to put solar panels at that building, to look at what are some of the things that has occurred around fossil fuels and the extraction, and begin to educate and make people aware. These are the job opportunities. We still looking up here when they're right here staring you dead in your face, ready for you to square off with the problems in your community, to say that, let me introduce myself. I am called solution oriented, and we are about to bring about some solutions in our community. And whether you like it or not, I am here to stay. And not only am I here to stay, but I'm about to build a relationship with people who are here to stay as well. We get to put a lot of these things on trial. We begin to redefine and reframe and rewrite, but we are scared to face what's before us because it's comfortable. And please forgive me. I'm so glad we own, but I know some people here that'll protect me. Y'all will throw rocks at me. But we get so caught up in the old stuff. We're still fighting racial analysis. We know what the analysis is. What's the answer? She said the reason she got this building was because of what? I think you said 2 words, and I'm going to say them slow. Economic development. Our communities need, there are a lot of communities that don't. I charge you to go and look and see what the economic development plan is in your community and see what you can do with it. Commissioner, I'm, you know what, this your show, not mine. Let me go to another question here. So because I want to wrap up and make space for folks. What are some of your next? What are some of the things that you're thinking about, not only with the school, but what are some of the things, or what would you say to the people today? And we'll make this your closing remarks so I can give people space to ask questions. What would you say to folks today when it comes to the opportunities in the local and the rural space to build? What wisdom would you put out here to plant that seed so that they can take away something and begin to think about what they can do in their communities, right in their front yard, neighbor to neighbor, or addressing blight, it's some of the, because you've done some stuff. And so, I just, I honor what you have done. I thank you for allowing me to witness you in these spaces. And so now, if you would just share, and nobody, you take it for what it's worth, but I think if you can seed down into your soul some vision or some strategy, or just dream again, y'all, we'd be fierce and come on now.
So I would say at the local level, in order to get into the fight, you have to be in the fight, right? And as I told you, I went home and I did a write-in campaign. I won a write-in campaign because the people in the community already knew me. I've worked in my community my entire life. If you want to change policy, everything starts locally. If you want to be a part of those conversations, go to your local, they have town halls, what are those things called? County council meetings. Be a part of those meetings. When it comes to election time, if you don't want somebody in office, vote them out and make sure, people in your community know why you want them out. Because a lot of these people are sitting in these positions because we never said anything. One of the things that we don't do, somebody told me this a long time ago, and I take it everywhere I go: who's checking the checker? You got to be able to check people on what they're saying, what they're doing, call them out and call them in and call them on the stuff that they're saying. You have to be able to do that. And you have to stand in your power. You are an entire human. You have the same rights as anyone else. You have the right to go to a county council meeting and tell them how you feel because you pay taxes. You have the right to put your name on the ballot. When filing, I learned that you have to pay fees to file to be on the ballot. But if you are just that powerful, then do grassroots organizing in your community. Grassroots organizing is going to people, talking to people, humanizing those conversations, talking with individuals, letting them know your story, because the story that you tell, if somebody is for you, they're going to connect with the story that you give them. So connect with people through your story, because that's your power. That's how you win the things. That's how we win, is through our stories. And if people can connect, then they'll follow you. It's not what you say, but it's how you've done what you said you're going to do. And lastly, people don't care what you know until they know you care. We're all here. We're doing this work. Like, I know Bishop cares about all of you knowing this information. because she formally sent me an email to y'all rather than picking up the phone. So I know like she cares, and you gotta have thoughts, you gotta have your story, and then that story, you gotta have a strategy for winning. People will follow you, but you have to have a story, a strategy, and a plan for them to follow. But you gotta make sure that you care about them, because if you don't care, then they're not going to care. I think that's all I got, Bishop.
That's all you got. I just heard the mic hit the ground. Did anybody feel the vibrations? Because you said, you know what? You said call them out, call them in, and call them on it. That's number one. You haven't lost your ability to make the call, but a lot of times we feel like we do. You said story is our power. That's how, that's how we win, is through our stories. And she's right, because you know what? They have a story and they've been sticking to it for a long time. When you think about how they talk about petrochemicals, they're going to tell you that it's going to help your community. It's going to bring jobs in your community. All of these things. Oh, you'll get health benefits. They're killing you and employing you all at the same time. And they just don't want you to know that it's happening. They don't want you to understand and to know that you can go, and you'll learn this tomorrow, so I'm not going to spoil it. But there are ways that you can do this. But they tell the story, and if we don't realize how important story is, we're in trouble, because you know what? They spend millions and billions on ads and stories than they do on the election, because they want to persuade you. They want your buy-in, and they want it to resonate. And that's what the whole thing is about. And then we get mad because we bought into the misinformation because it sounds good, rather than researching the information to know whether or not it really is good. And so we kind of fall by. But the thing about it is how we win, and not just with any story. You got to have a counter story that does not repurpose and normalize and use their language. We have normalized a lot of stuff. And then people get mad when you say, but you've normalized it, because you know what? Rural and urban are really just code words to divide us and separate us. When in fact, rural people have the same problem as urban people. You know what I'm saying? Everybody want to eat. So I just want to thank you for that, because if you all don't take away but three things: you got to have a story, you got to have a strategy, and you got to have a plan. And you got to work that plan, number 4. And organizing is about working that plan. As a former organizer, we used to take a radius and say, this is who we're going to build that relationship with. And we got to know the people, and the people got to know us. And with that being said, we built the relationship, and the goal is to get that company organized, that community organized enough and educated enough, and you build that leader pipeline deep enough and get them believing, then they'll do the work. And then you go to the next community. And as you continue to go, next thing you know, your whole community activated, and they're showing up. So I want to thank you for that. I want to commend you on the purchase of the school. I cannot wait to see what you're going to do with it. I'm going to need a job. Give a sister a job, okay? I need a job. And so, but this has been so inspiring and so enlightening. And remember, even though you all don't have an origin there, you can be an origin there. So I want to open up the floor for anyone who has any questions or comments, for the commissioner. And you can just raise your hand up, Marie.
Bishop, you knew I was going to raise my hand. I'll just go ahead and say, back in the day, they called me the question queen. First of all, Commissioner, we have so much that we could say. First, I only have 2 questions, and I'm going to keep it simple. How close are you to Toccoa, Georgia?
Toccoa, Georgia is
She knows where it is.
maybe an hour or so.
Oh, honey, you just blessed me. Y'all, I can go and see her because everything you said, for people who don't know me, I put in the chat that I'm proud podcaster with Melanie and Nita Jade and Kim. And I don't even know where to begin, but everything you said, I could take and bring to my community, my rural community in Northeast Georgia. For those of you who don't know the area, that's the thing about Appalachia. Somebody over in Pittsburgh, like Melanie, or the areas thereof, Crest, anyway, I can't remember all these neighborhoods, but anyway, we can find commonality. So that's the number 1 thing. The number 2 thing is that I did not call myself an environmentalist at all. I was all racial justice, culture, the arts, until they were dropping, I don't want to cuss, apostle and bishop, chicken houses in the historic Black community, which is the only place where we have a concentration of homeowners. And they have a plan. And so far they're winning to just drop them in residential area, next to elders, next to people who are going to be ready to lose their land because they don't want to stay anymore. The younger people may not come back. But all you said, though, is I was thinking about running for county commissioner, and I've gone back and forth, but I realize now I can do a write-in campaign. I don't know, I'm not going to say I'm going to do this, but and I'm very politically savvy. I know Melanie, but I don't want to be with them. I have other avenues to fight, and y'all are going to hear about them in the next couple of weeks because a PBS special, a novel that someone has written. I have these things that are in my lane, but I came back. I'm here in Toccoa, and I'm not going anywhere. So I'm trying to figure out how we can work the system, because, like one of the things I think you might not have said, Erniko, where you could probably maybe share at some point, are the times you don't win the fight visibly, but then you pivot and turn it into something else. And that's what I was thinking of, because we went to the county commissioners meeting. We had 100 people there. I documented everything. We wrote letters to the editor, but the system is messed up. And it goes from a planning committee that's appointed by the county commissioners to the county commissioners. And they looked in our face and they said, well, people have a right to do what they want to with their land. And my granddaddy had chicken houses. And people pleaded with them. They talked about relationships. They quoted gospel and everything. And people left that building, that courthouse, defeated. But I started to think about things, which maybe is just the beginning part, as powerful as getting the stories, doing a documentary about our community, to galvanize those thoughts, to think about how we can go on. But there's a lot of stuff I won't even say. But I mean, that I just wanted to share that with you. But is it true that basically I could do a write-in campaign? Any of us could do a write-in campaign just to push an issue, regardless of how the outcome. Because like I said, I wanted to run just to get the issues out, so that people had to hear me rather than just hear me as a landowner and a taxpayer, because I didn't really care. Because let me just say, this is something I've learned. I win every fight I'm in. I'm going to set it up. So there you go. I win. I'm not going to get in a fight unless I can win it. So it's not about, oh, did you win the election? No, if I can galvanize people, then I won the fight. I'm 60. I know I don't look like it because I got genes. but I'm going to win every fight. If I'm not going to win it, I'm not going to get it. Let me stop. I'm done. I'm like Bishop. I got the Holy Spirit. I'm sorry.
No, you said a lot, and you're absolutely right. We win every fight because if you are changing the minds of people in your community, you may not win this one if you keep going back, keep doing write-in campaigns. You absolutely can do a write-in campaign. I am it right here. I wrote mine in 2 weeks out. You can do that.
Because I refuse to give them $350. I refuse.
Right.
That's my car payment.
And like documenting that stuff and having people and telling stories and bringing, Black folks used to bring, come together over food, have conversations around this stuff. You may not win the very first one. I mean, I was just lucky, blessed, whatever you want to say. I had already done the work in my community, but if you can get people together to have those conversations, to share their story, to share why, we need to change the trajectory, then you've won. It may not be with the Board of Elections, but you've won because not everybody's talking about what's going on in your community. Everybody's not aware. So education and awareness around those issues is the very first step, in organizing. So you want to educate the people in your community. This is why we won't take this sitting down. This is why we're not going to do this. This is how this hurts our community. And when you start talking about, money, you start talking about health, you start talking about these issues, people will listen because your story should connect with them and how it's going to impact them. And if you can get to how this is going to impact them, they'll listen to you. Make that connection of impact for them plain so that they can build with you. And not only will you build a relationship, but you're going to end up building a network because after you tell that person, girl, let me tell you, Marie came over here today and she was telling me about them chicken coops and this and that, and I didn't know that they did this. Somebody else, well, you got to talk to Marie. Marie said that she gonna have a conversation. We gonna meet over yonder and we gonna get some food.
You know what? It already happened. It already happened. Right. And just like you had said earlier for people, because I'm not going to just do this for me, but I'm trying to give you this different approach I had seen. They always knew I was Mabel and Murray's smart daughter. They always knew that. But when I started galvanizing my community, because I'd done it in every college campus I'd been on, but this is the first time I had done this specifically. I mean, it's right around the corner from where I live. And we got signs and everything. So they have that faith in me because they said, oh, and I was shocked. We met it, like you talk about, we need to tell narrative. It's a utility building in our neighborhood that a family put there for community events before these other venues were open, which is now the posh thing to do because somebody was killed in a car accident. Yeah. They took their insurance money and did that. But I just wanted to say, so that's about empowerment, like we said.
Thank you for sharing, Marie. And I know we get passionate about this work. I just see that we have two other hands. And trust and believe this won't be your first time with her. Dr. Ford, Apostle Dr. Ford, will have you, and after you, Katanya Hart.
Yes, good afternoon. Commissioner Brown, you have no idea how you excited me here today. I tell you, your story was something that I had never heard about. Why? Originally, I'm from New York, so we don't have to do the farming and all of that. And it was just invigorating to hear what you have to say. Right now, I moved from New York. I'm 12 years in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And when I tell you a culture shock has taken place, it has. But I've learned that I always knew how to fight. And fighting for what you want is vital, And you talked about commissioners and everything. Just yesterday, our county commissioners had to make a decision on whether to tax the taxpayers for a new jail that they want to build. Well, after 3 hours of deliberation, 4 of the commissioners voted against it, and the other 2 commissioners voted for it. It was only 6 of them. And so that got put on the back burner. And that is because a group called Help Not Handcuffs flooded the commissioner's office. And so, you know, you're fighting, and everything that you are doing and that you have achieved is just outstanding. And I know there are many of us on this call who are also in the fight. Dr. Pressey and I, sometimes we got to go in 2 different directions because there's so many issues to be taken care of. So Commissioner Brown, I just want to leave you with this. You've only just begun. So now begin again. Start over and get that doctorate. God bless you. May heaven smile upon you.
Thank you, Dr. Ford. Tanya.
Hello, this is Katanya Hart. I'm here in West Virginia, West by God, Virginia, and I see one of my cohorts, Dr. Shaniqua Smith is on here, which I hope she takes a moment to say something. But it was through deciding the Crown Act was a hill that I could die on, that experiencing the discrimination because of my hair, to see other people suffer, hearing that story and having my own that had galvanized me, it allowed me a space to also work with others to stand in solidarity and gather their stories. Right now, I don't know if you heard how they're trying to change our story in Florida. Have you heard about the situation there?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And so I have a comment after, but I would like to hear your thoughts about how they continue to try to change our story.
For me, everybody's trying to do that. There's like this whole erasure of Black people, like in every aspect that is going on. And you have to have people like, I didn't know that my story was as important as it is until I got into this, right? And so for me, and I won't go like deep down into like the stories and stuff, it's like you have to be willing to stand up, even when you're standing alone. Like in my community, the people who are there, like I can remember people wanted to come to this, they want to see it, but they didn't want to say anything. So a lot of the time I stood alone. But when I stood alone, I stood flat-footed and said what I had to say. You know what I mean? And that's the thing that you absolutely have to do. Like you have to stand in your power. You have to tell your story. You have to connect with the other people. They may not want to say anything. And a lot of times, you know, it takes bodies, but even them being there silently makes a difference. If they show up with you, that makes a difference. Standing in solidarity with you around an issue makes a difference. Because me being honest, when I told you about the public hearing, like I told you, there are a lot of white people who didn't even have anything to do with the building. And it went from 5 county council people all aboard with this to changing the minds of 2 county council people in that meeting because they were there. I still won because it was a 3-2 split, but having the people from that community, some of them spoke, some of them didn't speak, because when you start digging deep, when you start wanting to change things, it gets uncomfortable for people. So it was uncomfortable for white people to see a Black person coming into their community, not the main community not the whole county, but their community, and wanting to make a change. Because what I didn't tell you was there is a nonprofit in my community called Willington on the Way that is fully funded by basically a really big white-led community, where they live in these houses that are between $300,000 and $500,000. And so they donate money. This is basically retirement for them. They donate money into that. And there was nothing that was representative of my community. And so they banked on, oh, this community, we can put a historic thing, we can do this, we can do that. They banked on that. They never banked on somebody coming back to their community. Because when I did my giveaway, I even had one of the guys, he was like, hey, well, if you get too hot, you can come over here up under the awning. And I was like, well, you know, I sure hope so. Being a resident and growing up in this community, I sure hope that I can. And he was like, oh, well, I didn't know that. Of course, you wouldn't know me. We don't have the same socioeconomic status. You don't even live here. You're just coming here to volunteer your time, whereas I got to work all day. So you're not going to see me. And even in my community, they did a Juneteenth this year. Juneteenth was June 2nd. June 2nd was a Tuesday, and they did it in the middle of the day. Every Black person in my community works. My mom goes to work. Her shift starts at her job at 4 p.m. She leaves home at 2:15 to drive to get there 15 minutes early just to take a rest, gets off at 1:30 in the morning, has to drive back home. My mom gets home about 3 o'clock in the morning from a job. You know what I mean? And so when I did these things, when I had them in mind, I'm thinking about the people in my community. And when you do this work, you have to think about the people in your community. I've been remote for the last maybe 5-6 years. And so when they do what they do, guess what? I'm just like, yeah, baby, I got time. I can come to your meeting and I can say what I want to say. But what I did was I strategically built this table out for myself so that I could do what I needed to do on behalf of our people, because everybody can't do this. My mom can't come out because she has to go to work. My uncle can't come out because he has to go to work. My sister can't come out because she has to go to work. And guess what? Some people have kids. And so I strategically built this table. I built this organization just by chance. Bishop knows I happen to be blessed. Somebody funded me for the next 3 years so that I can do this work, so that I can change the trajectory of my community, in my community, for my community. And guess what? It's even better because it's by my community. I'm from this place, so I'm going to do the work for these people who don't often speak up for themselves, because everybody's afraid because they live in the community. I'm not afraid because I live here, but my check doesn't come from here. I live here, but the funding for my organization doesn't come from here. So I'm not even aware of what funding my county gives. And I don't even care because my money is a little bigger than McCormick. You know what I mean? So you have to go in with that mentality, that mindset, and say, it's not about what you're doing. It's about what I can do for my people. And you got to put your people first. It's a people first mentality that you have to have doing this work, and understanding that it's not about what they say, because they're going to try to do everything to hold on to what was, but you focus on what is and what will be by the work that you're doing.
Well, one thing that I'm working on is a workshop going back to our history with mutual aid, so that it's our own money. It's great to go after what they say is ours, but it's another thing to have what is ours. So working with an economy of our own, we created a workshop called Fighting a Patriarchal Economy with Joy. And part of that is going back to SUSUs and mutual aid, where we build out our own monies and lend it back to our community. Have that fund that has nothing to do with the city, the municipality, anyone else. If we say we need it, we raise the money and we do it. And that we're not being extractive to the community, but supporting the community with our own funds, with our own voices. So I definitely understand. But the other thing that I think is missing here is we want to talk about what everybody else has and what's been done to us. What about what we've done to ourselves and removing those elements? You know, I love Juneteenth because at that time, everybody's ready to talk about libations. All those things go into us, the good and the bad. And we need to be very mindful of those things. I start thinking about the generational curses that are there. And if we don't do the work of removing those things, they will continue to perpetuate and continue to go forward in our communities. But the other thing is allowing our communities to have the opportunity to support us. A lot of us, I think I've recognized some people from previous times being on here in this space. What about the free technology and taking the time to learn? It's great to jump in, but I think also education. Can you, as you told the story, was there education that you went out for, Commissioner? Things that you didn't know, but you knew you needed to know, and you had to go out and find out?
Some of the things that I didn't know, because I honestly had been in my community, but sort of kind of detached because of the work that I do and the spaces that I hold. I didn't know things like broadband. I didn't know that they were coming in, cutting down the trees at the rate that they were. I didn't know that, I didn't know how deep this organization was, and like how it's the organization that I told you guys about that's in the community, the nonprofit. So it's a string of buildings that's considered the old Willerton. They fixed up the white-owned buildings, but the 2 Black-owned buildings in the old bank that another Black person owns, they didn't fix those up. So it's intentional, you know what I mean? And they brought some things to the community, but those some things that they brought to the community weren't representative of the community. And when I say that, anybody Black will ask you, what do I need with a painting sitting in a building? That's not beneficial to me. So a lot of things were brought to the community and highlighted as a good thing, but none of those things were representative of the community. And so what I did coming in and buying this school and doing what I'm doing, I opted, the first thing that I did was basically do a landscape analysis and a survey around what people want to see in the community. Talk to people about the things. They told me they're tired of going to the store so far off. They need that. They need some of the women were talking about, they have rugs that they got to drive 20 minutes to wash. And then building up this place that don't have a park, they don't have a place to walk. They don't have these things. And so that helps me build out what I'm doing because of the things that they say that they need in the community. And so with this project, my organization merely purchased the building, but this building will be reconstructed or revitalized to serve the community and the needs of the community and the people who actually live in the community. So if they want a park, we're going to put a park out there. If they want, these things, we're going to do that. And we're also looking at workforce development. I am currently hiring, but like you all circulate the Black dollar, I'm hiring a lot of Black people because that's what's needed in the community. And I appreciate what you and your organization are doing, because that's how we win,
Yeah.
and I may be hitting you up to figure out how I can do what I need to do and circulate the Black dollar in my community. Like, we don't have food trucks, we don't have, a lot of these things. And so like being in a space like this, and you just talking about what you're doing in your community, Miss Marie, you talking about what you're doing in your community, this is how we build. This is something like, I never thought about some of the stuff that you're talking about. My thing was workforce development, you know what I'm saying? And recreational things for individuals to do but what does it look like if I add that part in there in what I'm doing and connect with you all?
Just quickly, African American community is #1 for taking their income for leisure or waste income. And so in teaching that aspect of making one extra mortgage payment in a 12-month period, making 13 payments in 12 months will reduce your mortgage by 7 years and lead you closer to home ownership. And sometimes Money Circle can help you with that, because you'll get that one lump sum. No, you don't have interest on it, but because you put in, and when it's time for your hand, you can make that lump sum payment in order to reduce over time. And in that way, helping each other have ownership. It's that ownership is the value, and getting out of that renting and throwing away income. And also very concerned about the debt that is required in this country for those of us who are not millionaires and billionaires. But we can do it. We've done it before. They've burned
Absolutely.
down. We can do it. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to thank Commissioner Brown and Katanya for your conversation. Just what everybody has brought into this space. I know we're almost at time, so I'm just going to ask you all for like 3 to 4 more minutes, maybe 5. I just want to wrap up. We wanted to do a Mentimeter before we wrapped up, and then I want to just kind of give you an overview and do my thanks and gratitude, and then I'm gonna let y'all go because I need to get some ice cream. Y'all know it's Friday. Okay, so you know I gotta have some ice cream with that candy heart shell on it. It's Friday. That's my stress release. So Annie, I'm going to ask you to do the Mentimeter, and then I'll say my gratitudes and thanks to y'all. But don't go nowhere because we need your voice even in the Mentimeter. Come on.
All right. I hope it's the right question. Let me put that in there and share my screen. What does community power look like to you? Oh, here we go. We'll give it another minute.
You want us to put those words on the Mentimeter for you, Dr. Ford? It's in the chat.
Yes, yes. Thank
Okay.
you.
Intergenerational. Somebody put intergenerational knowledge. If we can put that on the doohickey on the, yeah, there it is. Thank you. These are beautiful words. And you all, we will share this with you. And this is just the beginning. You know, it's about this is how we vision together. This is how we put our voice, bring our voices together. When you think about this Mentimeter, this is all of us sharing our vision, our hope for our communities, the change that we want to see, the change that we want to be, the markers that we can put in the ground so that we can get to the places where we need to be. I love that word, shared purpose and shared joy. Those are so powerful because that's something that we did, growing up. And we have to remember, that just those two words moves us out of the place of isolation and began the footsteps, to regeneration, to restoration, even replication, because we need to replicate these things. And again, this is so beautiful. And just, we want to continue this. This is not the destination, y'all. This is a stop. We have to make stops along the way in this fight, but we have to continue to move on, because this is not just hard work. I always tell people this is heart work. That's why it's so hard, because it involves your heart. It involves your emotions. It involves what you're trying to make meaning out of. It involves you and everything connected to you. So I want to thank all of you who came today and participated. Commissioner, I want to thank you for such a rich, and my favorite word, delicious conversation, because I believe we were fed very well this afternoon. We were fed hope. We were fed inspiration. You ignited and activated a faith. And I'll say me, I can't talk about everybody else, but I can talk about me. You ignited something inside of me that just reminds me that, what? Hope is not lost, and it doesn't even have to be deferred. It just has to be built up. I am so thankful because you have brought us to a place of remembering, and letting us know what's possible. I don't know about you all, but I'm ready to dream again. If you stop dreaming, start dreaming again. You know what? If you stop daydreaming, start back daydreaming. If you stopped imagining, start back using your imagination. If you sat by on the sidelines too long, start a whispering conversation. Whisper to your heart, whisper in your ear, begin to tell yourself some stories. I heard Katanya say what was missing, was the thing about us, but where the us starts at is really in that story. And that story of self connects us to the story of us. But I think what she's saying is, that is so powerful, because it's like, never forget you exist here, that everything starts with you. And you are the beginning of your community. And so I just invite you tomorrow, to join us on day 2 of the Policy Summit. We will have 3 tracks. One is called Knowing My Power to Drive Local Change, which will be presented by individuals from Fair Shake, Shanta Reed and Megan Niebler. Then we'll talk about building power in your community, petrochemicals, decarbonization, and other research by Joanne Kilgore, Executive Director of the Ohio River Valley Institute. And then bridging policy and narrative, using your story to influence public policy by Artie Griffin from Emerald Cities Collaborative and Sabrina Williams from Climate Nexus. And then we'll have lunch, and we're going to come back in the afternoon, and everybody's going to stay in the same space in the afternoon. And we're going to hear from Betsy Dirksen Londrigan, I hope I'm saying that right, who's the Illinois State Director for the USDA Rural Development, to talk about the possibilities there. We're going to hear from Emily Freeborn, who's an attorney with Fair Shake Environmental Legal Services, who's going to tell us about how community lawyering can be a part of our work. But from that, our aim to do in the afternoon is to bring everybody together, because it's important to me that you leave with something in hand. And so we're going to be able to talk about these different things, and everybody can have a framework and a template and some visioning sessions of visioning that you'll be able to take back to your groups and your communities, or even within our coalition, to be able to move this work forward. You'll get a copy of the, I know I had to cancel the webinar for the storytelling toolkit. So the participants who join, you will get a copy of that. And I want to thank you all for your prayers for my family in that time. I want to not only thank Commissioner Brown again, but I want to thank Annie Regan, who is always here and helping us. She she need to give my kids some lessons, because Annie never tells me no. But my kids and them grandbabies of mine, no, no, no. But Annie is always there. And so is Ben of all trades, and Joanne Kilgore. I just want to say to the folks who really believe in this work, thank you for your yes to this work. We have one of our, I don't know if they want to be called out, but I will say I want to thank one of our funders for joining us this evening and really just, walking with us along the way. That means so much, because that's a part of building a deeper relationship. I want to thank those who we're building new relationships with. And I also want to welcome you to go to the BLAC Appalachian, our website. Check out our website, check out our story map. Ben put a beautiful resource guide in there. If you could drop that in there again, you'll get some resources. You'll have the Twitter, social media information. You'll have, for everybody who's presenting tomorrow, you'll have access to some other things. I can't remember everything that he put on there, but he did a phenomenal job. Marie mentioned something about podcasting. What she didn't tell you is that she podcasts for BLAC, because we launched a podcast a couple months ago called BLAC Remembering, highlighting the heavy and the hope. Check us out, because that's another way of telling your story. It's a way that people can tell their story in a safe way. It's a way that people can, hear those stories. And sometimes you're just activating people in that way. If you have a story that you want to tell, man, we ask that you come and share your story. And this is what's going to happen. It's going to be on our story map. We have to compile our other stories on there, but it is going, your voice, your story can be on our story map. You don't have to have your picture there. We can just put a little pin there. But as you all have heard from the article that Marie put in there, from what Katanya was bringing up, what the commissioner was bringing up, is how they are really trying to erase the history of Black people. And that should scare you. I'm gonna be honest with you, it should scare you, because we're here to do it. But what happens with our children's children and their children when we are not here? So I just want to encourage you, to share your story. I think, Annie, if you just if you're trying to get to the podcast and just type in BLAC Remembering, you may be able to get it that way. Marie or Melanie, if you have the link, because it's just one link on Buzzsprout, but we are on Spotify and Apple, in the Google search, because I don't know how. Amy, is she still on here? Is Amy McKinley still on here? I want to give a shout out to Amy. Amy, there you go. Amy has really been, so instrumental in helping us. And I would be remiss to say, to overlook her. So thank you, Amy. And you know what? I want to thank each and every one of you for standing with us, because the more we stand together, the more fortified we become. The more we stand together, the closer we get to that universal hum, that sound that reminds people that not only are we standing together, but that our roots run deep, and that we are here to stay, and we are making a sound that's going to vibrate and resonate across this country. You know why? Because despite whatever they try to do, we are here to stay. Because what and why? Our roots run deep. Our roots run deep. So I want to thank you all. I hope to see you tomorrow. Tell somebody, because it's going to be rich and fabulous, and it's going to be good. So have a wonderful, wonderful evening, everyone. You will get a recording of this. So don't worry, after it's all over, you're going to get all of that stuff and the Mentimeter. Yes, Marie.
And I just put a link in the chat. I found something for the podcast.
Thank you. So you can get that link and check out the podcast. That one link will take you to all of our episodes. And if you want to be on the podcast, hey, come on. We want to hear from you. All right. So just know y'all been pinned. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.